Good morning. Good morning. On this, it's kind of it's a very much a fall morning, hitting 5 points in beautiful downtown Huntsville, Alabama, but very fall today. So let's have Facebook build us a little audience here, and then I want to talk about the questions that you should ask yourself before you start asking questions to somebody else. And I'll jump in there in just a moment. Miss Betty, good to have you on. Good to see you, Brent. Anybody else? Let's build a little audience here before we get started. Walt, good to see you this morning. Always good to have Walt on because he makes a big commitment to be on from Thailand because it is really late at night in Thailand. Good morning, Shauna. Good to see you this morning. All right, let's get started. I want to talk about the questions that you should ask yourself before you ask somebody else questions. And the reason for this is because I've been to several networking events. I've been to several events, and one of the things you do at an event is that you network. And I'm kind of a funny sort of a networking guy. Here's the things that most people don't really understand too much about me. One is that I really stink at casual conversation. If you want to talk about the weather, you need to talk to somebody else. I try to say that when I come on because I feel like it's important that I tell you that it's a beautiful day. But other than that, I don't have too much to say about the weather. Don't have too much to say about the most recent football game or anything of that. And I'm just not very good at casual conversation, so it makes me a little uncomfortable. So I always have this little space around me that you have to get permission. Good morning, Dave. You have to get permission to get inside that space, if that makes sense. Hopefully, I'm sure I'm not the only person on the planet who feels that way. And so I have this little space, and you've got to get permission to get inside that space. That allows me to feel comfortable, all right? Because I'm not going to have, yes, I've seen the news, and my heart goes out to the people in Las Vegas. It really does. It does, but I can't let that affect my day. I have to get on with the show. All right, so I have this little space that I can't let people inside of, and it's really important that you get permission to get inside that space, and we can have a conversation, because I'm kind of protecting myself from other people. I do that. I'd love to meet people that can move things forward, and that can be beneficial to me, and I can be beneficial to them. I love that. I absolutely love that. But in some of the events that I've been to lately, I get this feeling as though I'm being investigated, if that makes sense. I feel a little uncomfortable, like I'm being investigated. Like, what are you asking that question for? So I'm going to give you today five questions that you should ask before you start asking questions. And 5 things that might be helpful. I got asked some questions the other day that made me really uncomfortable. It's like, you're trying to get into my space all of a sudden, and it makes me a little uncomfortable. And so it's important for us to discuss these things, because I want to be comfortable when I go to events. I want to be comfortable when I'm speaking to other people, and I need to work into that. I'm not an introvert. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that I'm an introvert. There's just a lot of things that just don't do anything for me. And casual conversation is one of those things that doesn't do anything for me. And so, but at the same time, there is a way to introduce a question that makes me feel more comfortable. All right? I got to ask the first question that I was asked by a person the other day. The first question, I introduced myself. I said, so I see you're with such and such insurance company. She says, yes. Who's your homeowner's insurance with? At that point, I'm ready to walk away. That's not a. You don't have permission to ask me that question yet. Another person, the first time I met them, they said, "So, what are you most passionate about?" It's like, okay, we're not speed dating either. All right, I've seen speed dating applied to networking. That's not. I won't go to those. I'm not interested in that. So let's talk about 5 things. 5 things. We'll see what's Dave saying here. Yeah, exactly. I want to be really careful. I think I don't like casual conversation, so don't talk to me about fishing and don't talk to me about the football game. I'm not interested in those kinds of things. Okay? And that doesn't mean I don't care about football. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not there for that purpose. Okay? That's not what I'm there for. So let's talk about 5 things that you should ask yourself before you start asking questions to somebody else. Because the first question you ask somebody shouldn't be, so what are you most passionate about? It's like, really? That makes me a little uncomfortable. So who's your homeowner's insurance with? That makes me a little uncomfortable. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet. So let's talk about those 5 questions. Are you ready? Here they are. I've written them down so I won't forget. Number 1, what information do you want to obtain by asking this question? In other words, if you're going to ask me what I'm passionate about, it's not even about spending money, Dave. It's just about being comfortable. I want to be comfortable in this conversation. And so give me a chance to be comfortable. All right? So first question is, what information do you want to obtain when you ask this question? What are you looking for? Well, she should have asked me, first of all, if I own my home. That would have been the first question to ask. You know, at least you would have had a little bit of a better introduction to that conversation. It would have been a little bit easier if you not started with, so what are you most passionate about? If you'd have started with another question and kind of warmed that up, just like, what are you trying to obtain by asking this question? See, I still don't know what she was trying to get to when she said, what are you most passionate about? I'm not sure what she was trying to get to. You know, was she talking about my relationship with my kids, or was she talking about my relationship with my wife? Was she talking about my relationship with other people? Was she talking about my relationship to business? I don't know what she was talking about. And so we got to be really careful about that. So what are you trying to obtain by asking this question? Number 2, will this question help to qualify the prospect? See, if she had asked me, do you own your home, that would have put the conversation in a completely different direction. But instead, she started with, who's your homeowner's insurance with? She's assuming some things that she doesn't necessarily need to assume. Joe's exactly right. You kind of got to know a little bit about the other person that you're talking to. Okay? Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I mean, find out why I happen to be at that event. Okay? Just start there. That would be a good place to find. You know, because that will give you an awful lot of insight. Will this question help to qualify a prospect? Now, I will never talk to that person about my insurance because I didn't like the introduction to that conversation. She's disqualified herself from me being a prospect for her forever. It's Taz. I'm sorry. First impression. There you go. Number 3. Will it take more than one question to find out the information I need? Is this question going to be important? See, if you say, what are you most passionate about? It's going to take more than one question to get to what she was really trying to discover. If you say, who's your insurance with? It's going to take more than one question to figure out what you're really trying to get to. So number 3 is, will it take more than one question to find out the information that I need? Number 4 is, will this question make the prospect think? Well, the first one, who's your insurance with, made me think, but what I thought about was not good. All right? The second question, when the other person asked me, so what are you most passionate about? That didn't make me think. It made me go, what? You started with that question? Instead, ask questions that will cause the other person to open up, that will feel comfortable, that will let you inside of that space. And every one of us have that space, right? Tell me if you have a space that you protect when you're around people who are strangers. Just say, I have a space. Just say that, because I want to know. I want to make sure I'm not the only person on the planet that walks around with a space around me. And you have to get comfortable in order to get inside that space. Most of you I have met in person. And when I've met you in person, you'll notice that there are times when the first time I meet you, there's a little space that I have, and you've got to get inside that space. I met Mohawk Joe for the first time back in March or April, whatever month it was, and he had made a comment when I on a live feed just before I walked into the building and saw him, and so there was already the barriers were starting to come down, because he cared enough to have a conversation, not a casual conversation. He just shown an interest. Now, showing an interest in the other person is valuable, okay? Because that lets that other person inside of your space. So question number 5. Can I ask a question that separates me from my competitors? You heard me all talk about, and I've talked about this a lot, about my going to the home show. And we go into the home show, my wife and I do, and at the home show there are a bunch of roofing companies. And she said, "What are you going to do today?" I said, "I'm going to talk to roofing companies." And when I went into the event to talk to the roofing companies, I'm there, and the first guy says, "So would you like to have a free estimate on your roof?" That's a really bad question. That's a really bad question, because roofing companies give free estimates on roofs all the time. And so I eventually got to the 4th roofing company, and I said, y'all are really asking bad questions. You didn't think about this question first. You paid to be here. I paid to get in the door, and you're going to offer me something that you'll offer to me every day of the week. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you ask me that question? See, you're not separating yourself from your competitors when you do that. Make yourself distinctively different. The questions that you ask should make you distinctively different than everybody else. It should tell the other person that you're talking to why you should be having this conversation. That's what lets people inside of my space. Why should we be having a conversation? Why should I let you into that space? Ask me a question that makes you stand out from everybody else. If you ask me the same question everybody else asks, then you're just like everybody else. And then I protect that little space. And it's like, I decide whether I want to let you in or not. And I'm not alone in that. All of you said that you have the same problem. You have the same issue. I shouldn't say it's a problem, because it's not a problem. It's just how we're wired. We're going to give permission to people to have conversations with us. Sometimes it's that person's smile that says, okay, they can come into the space. Sometimes it's their enthusiasm. Okay, that'll let them into the space. Sometimes it's the question that they ask. And I find it really interesting that in all of these meetings that I've been to recently, I've had a number of people who have asked the very first question that they ask tells me I'm not sure I want them in my space. You get one chance to make a first impression. One. And so how you handle that's really important. Now, I've got these 5 questions written down here. They have a lot to do with people who are in sales, a lot to do with people who go to networking events, a lot to do with the people in those kinds of arrangements that do the things that we do. If you're interested in having these 5 questions, I'll be glad to give them to you. Just tell me, yes, I would like to have the questions. Just put that in the comment section there, and I will send the questions to you by private message. I'll just send them over to you, push send here in just a minute, and you can have those. But I only want to give them to the people who are interested, okay? It's kind of like that space, all right? If you want in that space, then just say, yeah, I'd like to get inside that space, and give me those 5 questions that you just read off, and I will be glad to send those to you, because I want you to have them. I want you to get really good at asking the right kind of questions that puts people in a place where they're comfortable, all right? I want people to be comfortable inside that space. And if you ask the wrong question first, you've made a bad impression straight out of the gate. Now, you can ask questions that qualify the prospect, but don't let that be the very first thing that you ask, because that puts them in an uncomfortable position. So let's make sure. So if you're watching this live or you're watching it on a replay, just put yes there, and I will make sure I send that to you as a private message, because that's really how I would like to do that. I don't want to use this as an opt-in like I normally do. Didn't put a link above. These are just copied, and I will just copy and paste those into private message and send them over to you, okay? Because I really want you to have those. You get one chance to make a first impression. The questions that you ask are more important than the statements that you make. The questions that you ask are the thing that opens the door or slams it shut. And I want to make sure that you ask the right kinds of questions, but it begins with asking yourself certain questions before you ever start. So there's been a great book written called The Question Behind the Question. These 5 things are the questions in front of the question. Okay? So you ask yourself these 5 things before you ask the first question, so that you can have the questions in front of the questions rather than after the questions. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. I will get these sent off to everyone who's requested them. And if you're watching on the replay, I will be sure and do that as soon as I see them come up in the replay later. I'm going to be busy for a middle part of the day today, and then I'll be back later this afternoon. I'll make sure I catch that up. If you have found something here today that is good for you, and you think that your friends would like to hear that, feel free to share that with other people who you think might benefit from today's message. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you. Have a great day.